Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I wanted to film a video that debunks some of the myths around the nodes in your natal chart, but also the nodes in astrology in general, so the North Node and the South Node, which a lot of people refer to as your purpose or where you want to move towards in your chart and in your evolution. And that's true to a certain degree, but I think that a lot of people don't really know the deeper meaning of the nodes. That's why I wanted to bring you my insights or offer you my insights so you can reflect yourself on the nodes in your chart and the transiting nodes, maybe even for the collective, and have a deeper understanding of what it actually means when we talk about the nodes. So if that's something that excites you and you're curious about that, then definitely stay tuned. So when you look at your birth chart, there is something called the North Node and the South Node in your chart, which usually you don't see the South Node depending on the software that you use or the tool that you use to cast your chart, but you always see the North Node. And a lot of people actually think that the North Node is the most important thing because it's where you move towards, right? It's your purpose, it's your destiny, it's where you want to go to. And that's true, but only half of the story. I feel like a lot of people miss the other half of the story and also miss what the nodes of the moon really represent. And I actually just said it. It's the nodes of the moon, because every single planet in the natal chart in astrology has a North Node and a South Node, right? Because the North Node and the South Node just represent the evolution of that specific planet, okay, where this planet is moving or evolving towards. And it's also true for the North Node in your astrology chart. It's where you want to move towards, right? It's the evolution of you. But why is it the evolution of you? Because it's the evolution of the moon, right? The moon in your chart. And that's clear when you understand that the nodes in your chart that we see, right, that is literally in every single software, it's the lunar nodes, right? We talk about the lunar nodes when we talk about the North Node and the South Node. And I think it's important to know that, because then you can reflect on the moon relative to yourself, right? The moon is part of your personality. I always say that the personality is a makeup of the sun, moon, and rising sign, right? It's not just your sun sign, it's not just your moon sign, it's not just your rising sign. It's the three together. It's the trinity of these three imprints in your chart. But why is the moon so important? And there are many reasons for the moon being so important that we even only consider the moon's nodes, right? Because the moon is your ego. And again, there are a lot of misconceptions around the ego. A lot of people say ego is the enemy, ego is evil, which is not true either, because we need the ego, okay? We need the ego because it's our safety blanket in this crazy world. Because if we wouldn't have the ego, we wouldn't have an identity, we wouldn't have anything through which we see life, so to speak. And we wouldn't have any sort of security, any sort of, thing we can go back to. But we obviously can't be stuck in the ego. That's why the moon's nodes are so important, because it helps the ego to evolve, right? It's literally the imprint of where does our ego come from and where does it want to evolve into. And the ego is really scared in this life, right? That's why we have a lot of fear when we talk about the ego, and why people actually say, well, you have to, the ego is evil, because the ego has a lot of fear, but only because the ego wants us to be safe and to protect us, right? And that means that the ego doesn't really like to step outside of the comfort zone. So the journey towards your North Node, right, the journey towards the evolution of your ego, the moon, is not easy. That's why it doesn't always come natural to you, why it feels a little bit uncomfortable, why it feels really challenging, and why it usually takes years and years and years of evolution of finding security and safety in this world to go towards that North Node, right? But what I really want you to understand is that we talk about the lunar nodes, and that means we talk about the evolution of the ego in that sense, right? And why is that so important? It's important because it helps you to navigate this specific dimension that we are talking about. We talk about the dimension where you are embodied, your soul is embodied in this obviously human body, but also in this ego structure. And I think it's also important to see that the ego and your moon is something that you will feel every single day. It's the deeper side of your personalities. The sun is your hero's journey. The ascendant is, I always say, like, the archetype that needs the most development. That's why it's the rising sign, right? And it helps you to really go towards that North Node, right? It helps you to go on that quest. but it also doesn't come natural to you. So it's both like the North Node and the rising sign together help you together are a perfect match usually, or they, you know, they get along with each other. But both of these placements and both of these signs and energies need development and are probably, you know, a little, can be challenging actually for your moon. And whenever you feel unsafe and whenever you feel, you know, uncertain, then you would go back into your moon, because again, you've learned that the ego is protecting you all the time. So it's easy to be in your South Node, and it's easy to only lean on your moon, right, and on the defaults of your moon, because people also say that the South Node is your default, right? It's easy to go back to. It's actually something you don't even have to think about. You automatically end up in the South Node, and that's why you have to pay attention to that, and why it's important to observe what the ego is doing, and also observe what that South Node pattern is, and where the ruler of that South Node is, also where the ruler of that North Node is. Like all of these dynamics you can detect in your chart, and then you would understand, okay, this is actually the evolution of my ego, the evolution of my soul then in this 3D world, because you only have your ego in this 3D world, right? That's why it's so unique to be in this earth, or on this earth, right? And that's why we talk about the lunar nodes on this earth as well. So I think that's really important to understand, because it gives you even more foundation and background insight on why we talk about the lunar nodes in particular. Because in evolutionary astrology, and that's something I've said as well, is that Pluto is the soul, right, in your ascendant to a certain degree, but Pluto is the soul because it's death and rebirth and transformation. So why wouldn't we talk about the nodes of Pluto, which is actually, fun fact, the south node of Pluto is in Capricorn, north node of Pluto is in Cancer. And didn't we have all of these things going on in Capricorn, right? South node of Pluto, south node of the collective, south node of everything. But we don't talk about the south node of Pluto and the north node of Pluto just because it's not that personal, right? It's a generational planet because it's so slow moving, even though it is the soul. But it's more so with the reflection of what area in your life does your ego want to transform. That's reflective in Pluto, in your Pluto placement, right? And it helps you understand when you observe that it actually ties in perfectly with the lunar journey, with the lunar nodes journey in your chart too. So the journey of your actual destiny, right? So these things are really important to take into consideration when you talk about the lunar nodes. Please don't just say, well, it's my purpose, it's where I have to move towards, because that's also half of the story, because you don't want to completely move away from, first of all, your moon, right, because it's your ego, and you also don't want to just move away from your south node because it's evil. No, you just want to see what is the highest expression and the lowest expression of the south node, and usually it means that you have been on the lower end of things when it comes to your south node. That's why you want to evolve into probably using all of the gifts that also come with your south node. And a lot of people don't talk about that, you know. There are skills in your south node because you are so good at being in that south node, right? For example, I have the south node in the 7th house and in Gemini, and relationships, you know, the dynamics of relationships, helping people with the relationships, advice, everything, human psychology. I mean, I'm really, you know, I don't even have to think about it. It's easy for me to talk one-on-one with people, to understand people, to get on the same page with them, to find harmony, and to, you know, all of these things, right? To see both sides of things, like Gemini, right? But I have to develop my own independence, because it's also easy for me to fall into codependency, right? So where can I have the balance? But it doesn't mean that I have to be completely independent and emotionally unavailable and, you know, doesn't see both sides of things, just see my own truth. That would miss the purpose. Then I would probably be reborn with the south node in Sag at some point. But anyways, it's all with everything in the chart about balance, right? About balance and harmony. So don't completely throw your south node out of the window being like, no, I just have to focus on my north node and then I have mastered my evolution. No, that's also not the case, okay? You want to find balance. It just means that the North Node probably comes not that natural to you. That's why you need more development in that area. So I hope this gave you more things to think about when it comes to your nodal journey in the birth chart. Definitely go back to your natal chart and observe how everything ties in together and how you can master the evolution of your soul. And if you are curious in learning more about astrology, diving deeper into the basics of astrology, but not just the basics, like really the deep basics, right, from an evolutionary perspective, to really understand what is the journey of my soul, like what did I sign up for, what is my soul contract with the universe, and how does astrology help me to find that out, to figure out my purpose, my identity, my uniqueness, everything, then I do offer astrology teachings, the ABRACADABRA astrology school. All the links are down below in the info box. I have 3 levels as of right now, maybe even more when you see this video, about, you know, the basics, all of the signs and the archetypes and everything, the planets, but also, you know, the evolutionary journey of your soul, including the Pluto, Chiron, the nodes, also all of the aspects that are potentially happening in your chart too, so how the planets communicate with each other, influence each other, everything. So if that's something you're interested in, find all the links down below in the info box. I would love to have you. I would love to study astrology with you and dive into the magic of the cosmos. And if you have any questions, feel free to message me on Instagram, DM me, Magic Kathi Official, or send me an email, whatever works for you. And without further ado, I hope that you dive into your chart now and it helps you step into your magic.